Hey guys, hope you're having a good time while I'm suffering here in Philadelphia in a hotel for myself for 3 days, eating delicious food. They had lamb for dinner the other night. Oh my God, it was amazing. Anyways, I put together a little video to finish up the unit that we were in the middle of. I'd like you guys to please watch this. I'm going to give you a little summary work when I come back, just to make sure that you did the work and you should say that you watched the video. So please watch this video through, pay attention, make sure you understand the Gemara, and again, this also will be on our next test, so it's worthwhile paying attention to. Anyways, okay, so here we go. So if you remember correctly, our Gemara is in the process of discussing why the person who steps on the barrel in public is patur for breaking it. So our Gemara is in 3 parts. We did the first 3 parts. And then the last 2, the ones that are shaded in orange and blue, are the ones that we haven't done yet that I'm going to go through right now. So the Gemara said, on my patur, why are you patur for breaking the barrel? You should have watched. The person should have watched where they were going. So this is part 1, the Gemara's question. The Gemara then answers, if you remember correctly, with 3 ukimtas. And ukimta is the Gemara's way of taking the Mishnah and saying, well, the Mishnah makes sense if you're talking about a specific situation. So you're right, it does make sense. It doesn't make sense the person should be patur for breaking the barrel if they just stepped on it in public. Right, you should have watched where you're going. But let's say it's talking about a specific situation where you would not be responsible to watch where you're going. What are those 3? Amar Devei Rav Ishmei Rav. So Rav said, if the whole area is, the whole Rishut HaRabim, the whole public area is full of barrels, and they're in your way, of course then you're allowed to break and you be patur, because how else are you supposed to get by? Shmuel said, Ba'afei Shanu. It's talking about where it was in the dark. So normally you have to watch where you're going. If in the dark you can't, if you couldn't see it and you stepped on and broke it, you'd be patur. Rabbi Yochanan said no, it's where the barrel was around the corner, and since when it was around the corner you couldn't see it when you were walking around the corner, that's why you're patur in the Mishnah. But normally you would be chayav if it was just normally in the middle of the day walking down the street. You have to watch where you're going. If you step in and break it, you actually would be chayav. And the Mishnah is only talking about a specific case. Those are our 3 ukimtas. Then what we did was, the next part here, the highlighted in green, was a question. It was a problem with the opinion of Rav. I'm not going to go through it in so much in detail, but it had something to do with the fact that if Rav's ukimta, which says we're talking about where the whole area is blocked by barrels, so then you should be allowed to break it on purpose, and yet the Mishnah seems to imply only if you broke it by accident, because it says if you tripped, it should say that if you just stepped on it and broke it, you'd be patur also. And the Gemara answered that by saying no, and the Seifa is talking about where the person got hurt, and the person would only be the owner of the barrel would only be chayav to pay for the injury if the person tripped, but not if they broke it on purpose, and that's why it has to be talking about by accident. Either way, so again we have step 1, which is the question, why are you patur? Step 2 answers that with 3 possibilities of ukimto. The Mishnah is talking about this case, that case, or else normally you'd be chayav. And then we had a problem with Rav's opinion, right? According to Rav, it should be even if you broke it on purpose, and we answered that question by saying no, because the Seifa where it talks about where you injured yourself, that only makes sense if it was done by accident. But really, if you broke it on purpose, the person would be chayav would be patur for breaking. Fine. Now we're up to the next 2 parts. Okay, so this is the part that was highlighted in orange. This is going to be quickly just another way of answering this question. Oh, you should have watched where you're going. And the Gemara here is basically going to answer, no, you don't have to watch where you're going. Amar le Rav Abba lo Rav Ashi. Rav Abba said to Rav Ashi, Hachi Amar b'Ma'arava. This is how it was said b'Ma'arava. Ma'arav means the west. It's talking about Israel. Because remember, Israel might be to our east in America, but it's to the west of Bava, where the Talmud Bava was written. So what was said? Hachi Amar b'Ma'arava mishmeid Rav Ula. It was said in Rav Ula's name in Israel. Lefisha ein darchan shel b'nei adam. It is not the way of people to really watch where they were going. So when the Gemara asks, oh, don't you have to watch where you're going? The answer is yes. Normally it would be nice to watch where you should be watching where you're going, but since it's not the way that people usually walk, people just walk with their heads up. They're not usually watching where they're going, down at their feet. Therefore, you cannot be held responsible, and therefore, straight up, you're patur. There's no ukimta in the Mishnah. The Mishnah is talking about all situations. In any situation, if you step on something that's placed in public, you have no responsibility to watch where you're going. It's not the way people usually walk. You don't walk watching your feet, and therefore you'd be patur in all cases. So now just to go back to this setup again. So again, Gemara's question, you should watch where you're going. The Gemara's first set of answers, ukimta, saying, oh, the Mishnah is talking about this case, the Mishnah is talking about that case. Problem with Rav's and solution. And then the Gemara's second answer, which comes from Israel, b'Ma'arava, from Rav Ula, No, a person doesn't have to watch where you're going because it's not human nature to look down at your feet. Now we're going to go on to one last point, which is going to discuss a specific situation that came up and what the ruling would be and why. So over here, down over here in the bracketed area is the final part of the Gemara. It is a specific situation that comes up and a question about it. The Gemara says the following: Hava uvda b'Neharda. There was something happened in Neharda was a place, and what happened was somebody stepped on something in public and they broke it, just like what we've been talking about. V'chayav Shmuel, and Shmuel said the person was chayav for breaking the barrel in public. But Pumpadita, the same thing happened in a city called Pumpadita, v'chayav Rava, and Rava said the person who stepped on it is chayav. So the Gemara says the following, right? So again, someone stepping on a barrel in public, even though the Mishnah said patur, as we pointed out, some people say that really the person should be chayav unless it's a very specific situation. It was around the corner, it was at night, it was the whole place was blocked. So the Gemara says, and in both cases here, Shmuel says the person was chayav for breaking it, and Rava says the person was chayav for breaking it. So the Gemara says the following: Bishlama Shmuel, it makes sense that Shmuel would have said the person's chayav. Why? Kishmate. It fits, right? Kishmate literally means like he taught. Where do we see Shmuel taught that? Well, if you go all the way back up here, Shmuel Amar ba'afela shanu. Remember, the Gemara asked, doesn't the person have to watch where they're going? So Shmuel said, yeah, the Mishnah is talking about where it's at night. It's in the dark. You couldn't see it. What does that imply? That if it was during the day and you stepped on it and you broke it, you would have to pay. So the Gemara says, Bishlama Shmuel Kishmate. Shmuel makes sense because it's Kishmate. He would say chayav in this case because it goes exactly with what he said earlier. What he said earlier is that only in the dark or in a situation where you can't see at all would you say patur, but normally you'd be chayav. And that's why in this case Shmuel said chayav. Ela Rava lema kishmuel savarle. But are we going to say that Rava also holds like Shmuel? That only in a situation where you couldn't see it, you'd say patur, but normally you'd say chayav. Is that true? Is that why he's saying chayav in this case as well? So Amar Rav Papa, no. Rav Papa says the following: Karna de atzra have. Literally means it was the corner of the I think it's the olive near the olive press have. Why does that matter? It's a place where people normally put barrels on the floor. It was a place right by the wine press. People had barrels of oil, I guess they had barrels of olives that they put into not the wine press, the oil press, the olive press. I'm sorry. The kivan de birshut ka'avde, and since birshut ka'avde, birshut means with permission. Since the people are acting with permission by putting their barrels on the floor, meaning it's a place where people normally put barrels on the floor. A person has to watch where they're going. So the Gemara just said it was as follows. Shmuel earlier said that you usually are chayav for breaking a barrel unless it's an exceptional situation like it's at night where you can't see where you're going. So that's why in this case Shmuel would have said chayav. What about Rava? So Rava here is saying chayav again in this case, right? Would also you assume he says chayav because you always have to watch where you're going. So the Gemara says no. Normally Rava might hold actually that you do not have to watch where you're going and you'd be patur in a normal case. So why would he say chayav in this case? Because kivan de rishus kabdi, it's a situation where people normally leave barrels on the floor. You have to know where you are and you have to watch where you're going. So it's modifying the halacha according to Rava, which makes sense to say that normally you don't have to watch where you're going. But in a situation where you have to expect things to be there, you do have to watch where you're going. So now let's just read this last part from the top, where it's from Amar Alei down to the Yunei Mezal. So again, it's the Gemara's giving one more answer to our original question, and then another situation and what happened in that situation. Amar Alei Rav Abba Rav Ashi Hachi Amar Marava. The following was said in the Marav in the west in Israel, Mishmed Rav Ula, in Rav Ula's name. Why are you patur in the Mishnah? Not because it's in the dark or it's the barrels are blocking your way or because it's an exceptional situation. No, lefisha ein darkan shel bnei adam. It's not the normal way of people. Litboneim b'drachim, to watch where they're going. Therefore, you're not chayav, expected to watch where you're going, and therefore you're patur. Then the Gemara says the following. Now, side point or whatever, new case. Hava uvda b'nerda. There was a situation in Nerda where someone broke a barrel in public like that. V'chayav Shmuel. Shmuel says you're chayav. But Pumbedita, it happened in Pumbedita, v'chayav Rava, and Rava, who was the rabbi of that town, said you're chayav. So Bishlama Shmuel, it makes sense that Shmuel would say that kishmate, because that goes with what he said earlier, that you're only patur if it's in the dark, but in a normal case you'd be chayav. Ela Rava, but according to Rava, Lema Kishmuel. Sorry, Ela Rava Lema Kishmuel Sarvale, but are we also saying that Rava holds like Shmuel? Also, that normally you're chayav for stepping on it. It seems like it's saying that. That's why Rava says chayav in this case, because normally you are chayav because you have to watch where you're going unless it's an exceptional situation. The Gemara says no. Amar Rav Papa responds, Karna Tzara Havi. I guess he happened to know that this was a situation where it was around the corner near the olive press. Havi it was. To kivan de Rishut Ka'avde, since the person is allowed and expected, Rishut Ka'avde means they acted. Avde they acted Rishut with permission. Ibarla liuna mezel. A person should have to watch where they're going. If you're in this place where it's normal to place a barrel down, a person is, so to speak, acting with Rishut, with permission to place the barrel there, then you would be chayav to watch where you're going, and that's why you're chayav in this case, according to Rava. So according to Rava, you normally don't have to watch where you're going, but here you would. According to Shmuel, you normally do have to watch where you're going, and that's why in this situation you'd be chayav. In any situation, according to Shmuel, you'd be chayav unless it was in the dark. So just to summarize the opinions now, the way it concludes. So for each, both for Rava and Shmuel, sorry, I'm going to do this little diagonal here. For both Rava and Shmuel, we have a rule and we have an exception. According to Rava, the general rule is that you are patur for breaking something because you don't have to watch where you're going. The exception is where it's a place that it is normal. Oh, that's really sloppy. At a place where it is normal for people to leave things there. Then you would actually be chayav. So again, in a situation where it's normal to place things on the floor, then you would be chayav. That's Rava's exception. Shmuel says the opposite. Shmuel says normally you're chayav because you have to watch where you're going, except in a situation where it's in the dark, because in the dark you can't be expected to see it. And that's it for now. That's the Gemara, and we'll review it in class on Wednesday. Before we review it in class on Wednesday, just realized there's going to be a little assignment that I'm going to hand out to see that you had done this video, that you got the information, that you watched it. So please make sure you know this well and watch it a second time if you feel like you have to. See you guys on Wednesday.